Okay. What's up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I'm coming at you guys today with a fresh deck profile for the beginning of the month, and it is Sky Striker Aces. So, what is conveniently crazy about such a good deck is that Sky Striker Aces really are just Sky Striker Ace, right? And then everything else that follows her. And it's a really good deck. It's still one of the most competitive decks in the format right now, and because of how the TCG ban list went, it didn't get touched at all. So it is a lot of advantages to this deck. So I'll go explain more in depth when I finish with the deck profile. So I want to start off with that first. So for my lineup, I'm pretty much running 3 copies of Skyshaker Ace Ray. I'm running 2 copies of Ash Blossom, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, 2 copies of Effect Veiler, and 1 copy of Jet Synchron. For the spells, I'll start off with all of the Sky Striker spells. I'm running 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace. Sky Striker Mobilizing Engage. Sorry. I'm running 3 copies of Widow Anchor, 2 copies of Area Zero, 2 copies of Hercules Base, 2 copies of Jamming Wave, 2 copies of Afterburner, 1 copy of Multi Roll, and 1 copy of Hornet Drone. For the rest of the spells, I'm running 2 copies of Foolish Burial of Goods, 1 copy of Foolish Burial, 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army, 1 copy of Scapegoat, 1 copy of Card Destruction, 1 copy of Upstart Goblin, 1 copy of Dark Hole, 1 copy of Regeki, and 1 copy of Monster Reborn with Metal Foes Fusion as the last card. Then for my traps, and the only traps I'm running 3 copies of Infinity, just because it's such a really useful spell. It's a really useful trap card. It's a really amazing setup card, and there's so much to take advantage of with this card as a whole. For the extra deck, I'm running 3 copies of each of her extra deck monsters. I'm running 3 copies of Suzuki, 3 copies of Kagiri, and 3 copies of Hayate. For the rest, I'm running 1 copy of Needle Fiber, 1 copy of Summon Sorceress, 1 copy of Barrel Sword Dragon, 1 copy of Tapologic Bomber, 1 copy of Exciton Knight, and a copy of High Spearoid Canabara. As you can see, the side deck is just pretty much more hand trap stuff. You see the extra copies of Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre. I also have Winter Cherries. I have Ghost Bella, an extra copy of Jet Synchron, and then some extra copies of all the other spells. Terraforming's in here. First Barrier of Goods, a copy of Jamming Wave, Afterburner, Eagle Boost, Shock Cannon, Multi Roll, and their new spell, Victor Blast, or Vector Blast. Sorry. For the most part, what I initially got out of this deck is that it is still one of the most competitive decks in the format. So if you're trying to build this on a budget, you kind of unfortunately can't. The most expensive card still is, of course, its draw card in the form of, um, as I say, Ray, in the form of Mobilize Engage. And it's one of the most powerful draw cards in this game because not only does it search for cards that are specifically listed as um, that has Sky Striker in its name, but no Sky Strike in its name, but it also can search for. It also allows you to draw when you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, and it doesn't care what the names of those spells are. And that's actually what you get when it comes to a lot of these spells, is what spells are in the grave. And the amount of spells you have in the graveyard if they're 3 or more. So with all of these random spells you're running, it's never too far behind. Now, in terms of Ray herself, she is optimally one of the most utilized monsters of an archetype that only does specifically run based off of one. She has the ability to trade herself in for a link monster from the extra deck that has Sky Striker in its name. In doing such, you can easily go into stuff like Kagiri, you can go into Suzuki, and you can go into Hayate, switching around your lineup. Now, I do want to take note of the Earth attributed Link monster, um, Kaisa. Is it Kaisa? Yeah, it's Kaisa for the most part. But I really don't have too much of a problem with Kigiri. I mean, with the lineup as it is, it's just I don't like the Earth monster because it's a very situational monster. Has You have Hayate, who can send spells to the graveyard that can easily be picked up by Kigiri, and then during the end phase, Suzuki can pick up a spell from the deck that hasn't been used during the turn. So you have a lot of range there as well. In terms of hand traps, everyone has their own preferences of which hand traps they run. You can run any variation you want. I just chose to run Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, and Effect Veiler in a set in doubles, just because of the fact it'd be a lot easier. I didn't really take out much from the main deck itself, but maybe in theory I should have. But when the deck is primarily spell and you really just want to use the hand traps to advise yourself um, of different situations, that's pretty much what you get to use of it out of. Um, I'm also just trying to think what other. I mean, that was pretty much just the basis and the tidbits of it. When I look at the rest of the other cards in the deck, you still have a lot of the options from it. You have your draw card in Engage. You have was it? You have Widow Anchor, which for the most part, if it's not negating stuff, it's pretty much taking control of your opponent's cards and then using it against them. You have a Pot of Avarice like effect in Hornet Base, which is really, really exceptionally good, and I think it's one of the most underutilized spells because even though it is a quit spell, it forces you only to attack monsters. Um, I mean, you only get much in effect off of monsters. You can't attack directly. I honestly think that it is still a great card because it has the Pot of Avarice effect. It has a full range of its own ability to give you draw cards in conjunction to what you already have. And I kind of sound like I'm running over myself, but yeah, I mean, this is still a really good equip spell. You have Jamming Wave, Afterburner, that pretty much act like what the other one does when 3 or more spells in the graveyard. Jamming Wave destroys set spells and traps, but can destroy a monster when 3 or more spells are active. You have Afterburner that can destroy a face-up monster, but but with 3 or more spells, it can destroy it can destroy a spell or trap card on the field. So you pretty much get double MST and double one shot of a monster. I'm like, oh good, I can take as much time as I need to. um, Foolish Burial of Goods is only really here in combination with Metal Foes Fusion. What you do with Metal Foes Fusion in this deck, honestly, is just sending it to the graveyard to have another card to have a spell card in the grave. Then you send it back to the deck to shuffle to draw one. And because you're using up a spell when it comes to Foolish Burial of Goods, you're pretty much just setting up for the the 3 or more effects. And this is, like I said, it's not a bad card at all. And this card doesn't lock it. Oh no, it does lock itself once per turn, which is perfectly fine. I put in Foolish Burial simply just to send Raid to the graveyard in case I already had enough stuff already on board and I needed a Raid in the grave to trigger off of losing one of the Link monsters. If I lost Kigiri, Hayate, or Suzuki, I could easily just have, okay, Raid's in the graveyard, trigger her, have her come to the field, and then have her leave the field so that another copy of one of the other Sky Strikers can come to board. Area Zero is just it's a really weird field spell. It First off, it activates the top cards of your deck to see if any of them are the top 3 cards of your deck to see if any of them are a Sky Striker Ace card. You add it to your hand, and then you destroy the card that it targeted. This actually comes really in handy when you have a lot of dead spells, or a lot of spells that you need to start getting rid of. I think most importantly, if you draw into Metal Foes Fusion, it's a great way to set it to help it get rid of stuff. You can also get rid of Hornet Base and have Hornet Base's effect triggered to reshuffle cards back into the deck as well. You have Hornet Drone, just pretty much an easy token thing. I can honestly understand why this card got limited, because if you played this card right, you can stack on multiples of this card's effect. Like you can go three in one turn without having the extra deck monster, having a monster in the main monster zone, and then having those three tokens, and then being able to utilize those three tokens to make three various link monsters, and then have those three link monsters become one link monster. And I've seen that done before. Scapegoat, same scenario. Four monsters, go into a link monster that requires four cards, and then take advantage of it. Let's see. Let's move over. Reinforcement Army, just to pick up Sky Striker, Ace Ray. You have card destruction, and you have Upstart Goblin for some accessible draw power in addition to um, engage. The weird thing about card destruction was I wasn't going to run card destruction in this deck, and then I thought about it. I was like, well, I have Kagiri, I have Suzuki to really just replenish my hand anyway, so I don't really have to worry about it. And then plus multi rolls effect. So in conjunction, I was like, okay, well, this will be a great card to put into the deck. The only thing I'd have to worry about is losing my hand traps, but I shouldn't be too worried about them if I'm running majority cell. And then Upstart Goblin is just Upstart Goblin. Rageki, Dark Hole, monster removal, in addition to Jamming Wave's secondary effect and the first effect of Afterburner. The only other thing left is Monster Reborn, and well, I mean, that's Monster Reborn. So Infinity is pretty much Effect Veiler with more options. Anything in the same column that your opponent controls cannot be activated. Um, this card is just very, very useful and still why it's still a and very expensive trap card. It is set to get reprinted in TCG, and they did announce it was getting reprinted in OCG. Um, so I'm waiting to see how it fluctuates then. As far as the extra deck goes, Suzuki has the ability to reduce your opponent's monster's attack by 100 attack and defense by 100 for every spell in the graveyard. You can pretty much just flash out a lot of spells to the graveyard to make her stronger than a lot of things that she normally wouldn't. When she's summoned, you can search during the end phase. You can search your deck for a spell that has Sky Striker in its name, but was different from the ones you played this turn. Kagiri gains 100 attack for every spell in your graveyard. When she's summoned, you can add a spell card from your graveyard to your hand. Most of the time, you're probably getting stuff like Widow Anchor or you're getting Engage because those are the most optimal choices. Dealing with back row, you of course can get Jamming Wave, you can get Afterburner to deal with monsters, and just those little things that the Sky Strikers have access to. Hayate is a very unique effect. She sends spells to the graveyard um, when she attacks directly, and she has the ability to attack directly as well. So with this one, you can set her up for Kagiri, and Kagiri can go get the spell that you sent to the graveyard. Then Suzuki can get a spell that you didn't play. So it works really well in that. That's kind of why I think the Earth one is just lackluster because she doesn't do much interaction with the other Link monsters, and she really just doesn't have much interaction at all with terms of the deck except for gaining life points for every spell you play. And that kind of, unfortunately, just for me, doesn't help in any sense. As the rest of the extra deck monsters, Needle Fiber is a good combination with Summon Sorceress, and you go into type of Logic Bomber. Um, like it's a weird summoning setup, but it's like you summon the Needle Fiber, you go get a Link monster, I mean, you gotta get a synchro monster. You gotta get a tuner monster. Then you got like Jack Synchron. Then you make the summon sorceress, and then you play. Uh, you set up with your Hornet drone. So there's a token on the field. You activate summon sorceress to go get Ray, and then you activate Jet Synchron by discarding the card from your hand to special summon it. Then you go for Canobara. Canobara being a an easy swing 2 monster. Then you have what you'll do with the Summon Sorceress in probably either Kagiri or Hayate that you make from the token is you link summon into the type of Logic Bomber. So the type of Logic Bomber, let's talk about him for just a second. Any monster that's summoned to a field to a point in to the field in any area that he points to, destroy every other monster on the field except every other monster in the main monster zone. This is actually really resourceful to clear the main monster zone of a lot of threats and a lot of the whole link chains and stuff. In addition to that, if he attacks an opponent's monster, you inflict damage to your monster to your attack, so you're doing a lot more damage as well on an offset that you can burn your opponent. There are ways around it. It's just very difficult because you don't want to link summon into an area that it can point to, and you don't want your opponent to summon into a link area that this card points to. Because 9 out of 10, I've had that done to me. Where are we at now in time? 15. Okay, so then Barrel Sword Dragon is just one of my favorite extra deck monsters. That's a link monster. That's 4 or more. Um, I guess the only other... No, this is it. This is the only real one that I actually like out of all the other cards that have come out because it's just so resourceful. It's really good monster. I really do like Barrel Sword Dragon. Switches a monster to defense to give itself a secondary attack. When a card activates a response, and then your opponent can't chain anything to it. It's a really good resourceful monster, and he can gain attack to the monster based on the monster's attack that he switched to defense mode, which helps him out tremendously. Um, the other cards in this deck, of course, is the Exciton Knight, which is just pretty much a last-ditch effort if I got 2 raids on the board and I want to clear the field as soon as possible. Uh, let's talk about let's talk about Canabara. So, one tuner, one non-tuner monster. This card can attack twice during the battle phase. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles, it gains 200 attack, so it can help you clear stuff then. I don't really resolve the last effect because I don't run any other speedroids. Um, it's because I wanted just to focus on Skyshaker Ace Ray, her ability to summon stuff, and the whole thing about Bar is just to have a beat stick because I have all these tuners in the deck anyway. If I could take advantage of someone like Jet Synchron, then go for it. And I think that was actually something that I seen in that setup, so that's why I wanted to keep it around. But that's pretty much it for this. I know it's been a very talkative video, so I just wanted to make sure you guys get a lot of the information out. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about my Sky Striker Ace deck or any more decks and stuff like that, leave your comments in the comment section. Leave them in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. HPJ signing out. Take care.